Hello, my fellow chatterers and book lovers, and anyone else who's popped in because you're curious about what this is or you have got a bit lost. Welcome, everyone. I'm Chatty. This is my channel, Chatty Mad Chatter, and I'm going to be chatting away madly about my August stats. So, because it's stat time again, and I will be going through all of the books that I planned to read, whether or not I read them, which other books got thrown into the mix, how many I read, and kind of breaking it down into how much that was, the genres, am I hitting my reading goals by wanting to read more middle grade, more global majority authors, all of that kind of stuff. So on my channel, on my long videos, I do not edit them because it's nice not to have to do that. It is one continuous shot, the camera keeps going and I keep talking and we see what I say. I have notes for this one though, because I need notes for my start videos. Anyway, one shot, no editing, tiny teacup moment, clink, 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 clink. So, starting off by talking about what I plan to read in August. So I didn't have a TBR game this month because I had so many books that I wanted to read already that it was just going to complicate it. So I was like, just going to talk about a big pile of possibilities. So these were the main contenders on my pile of possibilities. The Trouble with Mrs Montgomery Hurst was definitely like the first one. I actually said in my video I currently started and I read that one. The Sky on Fire was kind of the second one that I definitely wanted to be reading, but it didn't work out. I kind of had a little bit of book hangover from Mrs Montgomery Hurst because my brain was just in that world and with those characters. So I needed some like palate cleanser books before jumping into a book that I was like really anticipating. And then I was getting closer and closer to like going away, and I didn't want to take this lovely copy of The Sky on Fire. It's a hardback. I think the cover's beautiful. And I didn't want it to get trashed and destroyed. But equally, I felt like once I picked it up and started reading, I'd want to keep reading it. So I've decided to like move that to to when I got back from holiday. So that got moved to September. He, She, They, I did read some of. It did come on holiday with me. So I started reading They, She, He by Skylar Baylor, How We Talk About Gender and Why It Matters, in April, and I read a bit into May. Then I had a wobble with life. Reading non-fiction isn't good for me during that time. So I just popped it on hold. And then when I was doing other stuff, like the two other trans non-fiction I picked up were a bit lighter. This kind of goes into it a lot, and I wanted to really enjoy it because I was enjoying it up until I had my wobble. August, I felt I could pick it up again. And I did, and I was reading it because I need to read it like in sort of chunks. And then have breaks in between. That's kind of how it works best. I like to be able to take the information in and then I like to sit with it and kind of digest it for a bit. So I read a good amount in August, but I didn't finish it. So that moved on to September as well. The Old One with the Knife I did start in July and I finished it in August. So that one was definitely done. Amari and the Great Game I read. Pages and Co, the fourth book in that series, The Book Smugglers by Anna James. I didn't manage to get to before I went on holiday. This is a beautiful copy that's a hardback. Didn't want it to get it destroyed. Moved it to September. The Undertakers. This is a paperback and the follow on to The Conductors by Nicole Glover. And I took this one holiday with me and I did read it. The Kingdom of Copper by S.A. Chakraborty, the second book in the Daevabad trilogy. Again, it's a paperback. I took it on holiday. And yes, I read it. So I mentioned needing like a palate cleanser after reading The Trouble with Mrs Montgomery Hurst. I didn't want to dive into a fantasy world. I wanted something that was going to feel a bit easier. Contemporary is that kind of palate cleanser for me, that light relief. And I just really felt like picking up Ghost by Jason Reynolds. So I read it. After finishing Ghost, I immediately wanted the next one in the series, which was Patina, so I got it out of the library and read that one. Another book that I really wanted to read whilst going on holiday, I chose it after doing some Healthy for Books. So basically, I hauled it from my secret stash under my bed and immediately read it on the plane. which was great. And that is Paris Dalencourt is About to Crumble by Alexis Hall. So there we go. Here are the books that I read in August. There are 8 of them. And now we shall get into the stats. If she can find them in the notebook. Okay. So firstly, I'm going to go into genres. So I read 1 historical fiction book. You could also class The Undertakers as historical fiction, but The Undertakers is a big genre crossover, and I think it's kind of mainly fits best in fantasy, but it definitely would work in historical fiction as well. So officially just classing 1 for historical fiction. And then I had 2 contemporaries, which is Ghost and Patina. 1 thriller, which is The Old Woman with the Knife. And then 3 fantasy. So not a huge amount of fantasy compared to what I usually have. So that is Amari and the Great Game by B.B. Alston, The Undertakers by Nicole Glover, and The Kingdom of Copper by S.A. Chakraborty. And then finally I had 1 romance, which is by Alexis Hall, Paris Dalencourt is About to Crumble. Moving on to talk about the age ranges. So I read 3 middle grade books. Amari, Ghost and Patina. With my goals that I like to kind of read monthly, like to encourage myself and allow myself to read more middle grade, I set myself a goal that I want to read every month a 3rd middle grade. And I definitely achieved that. 3 out of 8. Winner. Didn't read any YA this month, which is surprising. So no YA. And then I read 5 adult books, which are all the other ones. Ooh, there we go. Ooh, here they are. Oh, and everything else has collapsed. Paris Dalencourt is About to Crumble, The Kingdom of Copper, The Undertakers, The Old Woman with the Knife, and The Trouble with Mrs Montgomery Hurst. I've just realised a lot of the books I've read have very long titles this month. Okay, I'm going to pause while I put them back. Okay, moving on to where I source my books. So 5 books are from my own shelves. That's Amari and the Great Game, The Trouble with Mrs Montgomery Hurst, The Undertakers, The Kingdom of Copper, and Paris Dalencourt is About to Crumble. And 3 I got out of the library. That is The Old Woman with the Knife, Ghost, and Patina. Only 1 reread this month, and that is Amari and the Great Game. And all 8 books are physical novels. No novellas, no audios, no graphic novels. And moving on now to talk about the other goal that I have. So the other goal that I try and do each month is ideally I would like to have 50% of what I read every month be by global majority authors. So this month I have 5 books by global majority authors. So that is Amari and the Great Game, Patina, Ghost, The Old Woman with the Knife, and The Undertakers. And 3 books which are by white authors, which is The Trouble with Mrs Montgomery Hurst, The Kingdom of Copper, and Paris Dalencourt is About to Crumble. So for the first time this year, I have surpassed my goal. I have read 5 of 8 books by global majority authors. And I think it's the only second time that I've actually hit the goal, which leads me on to talking about it a little bit more. So one of the reasons I have this goal is because I really enjoy reading stories that don't reflect my lived experience. And also, it is still very common that the most books that publishers push and the most books that publishers get in are by white authors. So to balance it out, we want to be promoting the books to kind of even the playing field and tell publishers, yes, we do like books by authors that are giving us stories from Indigenous communities, authors that are telling us Black stories where our protagonists are Black and they have that representation, Asian stories, Latinx stories, like a mixture of cultures and lived experiences. And I am going to link a video now. I have totally forgotten it. Because I've just been watching it today and have not prepared enough for this. But this was a wonderful channel that I literally just found today. And I cannot remember the channel name at all. Because it's got a long title and then something in brackets. I think it's like Books on My Life. I think it's Books on My Life, possibly. Anyway, he's absolutely fantastic. And the video I watched was called Diversity versus Merit, and explores in that video sort of beautifully about arguments that people have for not needing an agenda to read and wanting to read books on merit rather than considering diversity and all of that. So I recommend, it's a really interesting conversation in that video. I really recommend doing it, but he beautifully puts into words a lot of the points and a lot of the reasons for why I am choosing to make this goal for myself. And I get a lot of satisfaction from doing it, so yay. Right, moving on to the next thing, which is the realistic representation within books. So having a more diverse set of characters and not just only stories about white able-bodied cis-het people, basically. So for this I am looking at the protagonists. There are books here where there could be secondary characters or minor characters that like fit within that umbrella, but I'm only counting it and I'm only interested if the story is about that protagonist. I don't want token characters, thank you. So in terms of the LGBT plus community, I have got 2 books. So we have protagonists in The Trouble with Mrs Montgomery Hurst and protagonists in Paris Dalencourt is about to crumble. In terms of characters that have got a physical disability or are neurodivergent, I have not read any books this month that have that representation in them. Again, there are secondary characters that have got physical disabilities in the books that I have read, but I'm only counting the protagonists. Mental health representation, beautifully done in Paris Dalencourt is about to crumble, and only really focused as a theme in this book. There are aspects of grief and trauma in both the Kingdom of Copper and in the Undertakers, so that's 2 for grief and trauma. And I have got 4 books with black protagonists, which are Amari and the Great Game, Patina, Ghost and the Undertakers, and 3 books with Asian protagonists. So that is the older one with the knife, the Kingdom of Copper, and Paris Dalencourt is about to crumble. And again, no Indigenous protagonists and no Latinx protagonists. Those are definitely areas that when I am bringing books into my home, or if I'm going to be like looking in libraries and stuff, I want to be kind of like getting those in because I haven't read enough of those and I really want to. I want to explore more stories. And that's it for the realistic representation. So we just have the series. Okay, so starting a series, I have 1. Ghost is the first book in the Track series, also called Run, I think. Technically, I started a series as well with Paris Dalencourt is about to crumble. So it's actually book number 2 in the I think the Winner Bakes All, which I love that pun. So the Winner Bakes All series, this is book number 2, but they are very much companion novels. So it is like, you know, like different seasons of a popular reality baking show. So this is the second season. So I think there are references to things that happened in the first season, but I absolutely did not feel I needed to have read that to get stuff from here. I think it's very likely that I will be reading those. I actually want to explore some of Alexis Hall's other series first, because I think it gives a slightly different vibe. So I'd like to explore different ways of his writing. So my son just woke up, so I went to tuck him back in. I put my glasses down somewhere, but I don't know where, and I don't want to go and look for them in case I wake him up again. So it's going to be squinting at the camera. Yes, so I'm not counting Paris Dalencourt's Batch of Crumble as part of the series, even though I will most likely pick up the other ones at some point, but I haven't got any plans to like focus in on it, and it's going to be like an as and when I find them, because I've got so many other books that I want to prioritize before these ones. So with my series, the reason I kind of like track them and log them is because I like to read series closer together so that you can remember characters, you can remember the plot, you can find Easter eggs, all of that type of thing. And a companion novels in a romance series, I feel I can easily pick these up and it doesn't really matter when. So not logging that one, but I am logging Ghost and the Track Team, because they do follow on quite easily from each other. In terms of progressing with the series, I have 3. So I have Patina, because I just started Ghost. I have Amari and the Great Game, and I have The Kingdom of Copper. And in terms of finishing series, I have read The Undertakers, which brings me technically up to date with the Magic and Murder. But like I've just said, the next book is not necessarily following these characters. So I feel I'll be able to just dip into that world again whenever I need to. And it's not going to be a problem. So I'm not going to be like tracking it unless it's following like a through plotline. So there we go, that is the series, which now brings us to me talking about my least favourite and my favourite book. If you want more details on what my opinions were or any of these, I will link my August wrap up video here, where I give all my full thoughts and opinions. So my least favourite book this month was The Old Woman with the Knife. I just don't think this was a story that was for me. I really loved the opening chapter. I thought it was great, but the things I loved about it then kind of like fizzled out as the book went on. I think the writing was really good. I loved some of the sort of like symbolicness that it did, but the plot didn't grip me, and I didn't really get an emotional connection with our protagonist. So that's why it's my least favourite. My favourite is much more difficult because I loved all the other books. Like, I loved all of them. None of them were just like fine or enjoyable. I loved all of the other books that I read. In this, I don't include rereads because you have a different relationship with a book when you have reread it. So out of all of my new reads, my favourite is going to have to be, there's two. So because fantasy and epic fantasy is one of my favourite genres, I can't not have Kingdom of Copper as my favourite. I'm loving this series. I loved all the things it did in this book. I loved following the characters. I love all the world building. The plot is fantastic. I love the themes that are being explored. I'm having an amazing time with this series, and I'm really looking forward to rereading it, and I haven't even finished it yet. The other one is not my usual genre, but historical fiction, The Trouble with Mrs Montgomery Hurst. I love this book. I just was so compelled to keep reading. I did not want to leave Wickenshire. I didn't want to leave these characters. I loved the arcs. I found it funny. I got emotionally attached to the characters. I had moments where I felt really sad, moments where I got really angry, and I just love it when a book makes you do that. Also, this really gave me those Jane Austen vibes, where it is like a social comedy, and like commentary on all the stuff. I loved all the themes in here, and I just had one of the best reading experiences with this book. So yes, Katie Lumsden's The Trouble with Mrs Montgomery Hurst, and The Kingdom of Copper by S.A. Chakraborty were my favourite books that I read in August. And that's the end of the video. That is everything I wanted to talk about in terms of my stats. If you have anything you want to say, please get chatty in the comments, because you know I love a chat. What was your favourite book that you read in August, or your least favourite book you read in August? I would love to hear. Happy reading, everyone.